Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, NFL Week 3 edition of the show. Ian Cameron and Philip Nelson back in the house, ready to break down Week 3. Thursday Night Football gets the week off to a good start. If you watched the video yesterday, Bills team total over 30.5 cashes. Smaller bet on the over hits. We cashed a lot of the props, and someone, by the way, mentioned that in the comments, saying, Ian, great job with the props last night in that Dolphins and Bills game. It wasn't easy. Credit to the Dolphins, playing with that desperation of a winless team, trying to salvage their season. It certainly made the Bills work for it, but in the end, Buffalo, they could not really be stopped. There was that sequence where they got a couple of stops in a row, Miami, but other than that, Josh Allen and the Bills went up and down the field, and the critical interception with 3 minutes left by Tua Tagovailoa in the red zone ended up killing any chances the Dolphins had of winning that game, and the Bills end up with a 31-21 victory. Philip Nelson, I couldn't, he had sent it to me after the recording yesterday, but he was on the Dolphins plus the points in the over. So it was not just a good result from yours truly in that game. Philip crushing it with that Dolphins-Bills game last night.
I should have let you know. Before you did the show. But yeah, I was just running all over the place yesterday. I didn't have a chance. But then all of a sudden I sat there and thought about it. And I was like, Dolphins they're gonna put up a fight here. And it just seemed too obvious that, Bills were gonna, come out and crush them. No, I didn't think that. I really truly thought that the Dolphins were gonna come out and try to put some sort of respect on their name, which they did. Credit to them. But the Bills are just still one of the best teams in the NFL. And the Dolphins just simply aren't.
No doubt. All right, let's get to the remainder of Week 3. Of course, Sunday games, and then, of course, we got a great one on Monday Night Football this week that we will talk about as well. Let's begin with the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Tennessee Titans. How about these 2-0 Indianapolis Colts, and how about Daniel Jones and the way he's playing so far for this Indy team? They'll go to Tennessee in an AFC South division battle. The Colts 4-point road favorites, 43.5 the total. There has been money coming in on the Colts here. It's hard to disagree with it. From a spot perspective, Philip, this is not the best spot for the Colts. They pounded the Dolphins in their first game at home. They're coming off a thrilling down to the wire win it with the field goal at the end after just a debatable leverage penalty called on Denver that allowed Indianapolis to get a second crack at the field goal to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And the Colts ended up winning a big win to go to 2-0. You do worry about a little bit of a flat spot, but it is a division game. So I am hoping the Colts don't, have a bit of a hangover or letdown following that game. One thing I can tell you is the Colts offense looks great. How about the fact that for the first time, I believe in NFL history, I'm pretty sure that's what the stat was, that I heard. The Colts not only starting the season 2-0, but not punting once in the first two games as well.
Yeah.
And that's been this Indianapolis offense. It looks good. The O-line's been solid. It's finally given Daniel Jones, unlike his tenure with the Giants, some time to throw the football, which has been good to see. Jonathan Taylor's run the football well. I mean, the offensive line's playing well. The receivers have stepped up. The defense has been solid, but it's really the offense that's been impressive. Denver's supposed to have a very good defense. There's the Colts just moving the ball pretty much up and down the field last week against that Denver defense. I was very impressed with what I saw from the Colts. I can't say I'm impressed, Phil, with what I've seen from Tennessee, especially on offense. I mean, he has been treated like a human whoopee cushion, Cam Ward, the rookie quarterback, here in the first 2 weeks. How about being sacked 11 times? That's right, 11 sacks yielded by this Tennessee Titans team. Their offensive line's been brutal. If this pace keeps up, he's on pace to be sacked over 90 times this year. How about that, if this pace keeps up for Cam? The offensive line's been in absolute shambles right now for the Titans. The run game, obviously, has been a problem at times as well. They couldn't run it against Denver. They did run it better with Pollard against the Rams last week, but still, the offensive line is a major question mark. Thought maybe the defense was pretty solid because they played pretty well in Denver, holding the Broncos to 20 points, but maybe that was just a bad game for Denver's offense because Matt Stafford and the Rams did pretty much whatever they wanted once they got going offensively last week against the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee giving up 33 points in that game. And obviously, when you look at what they've got with Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, and there's good receivers, and Tyler Warren's going to be one hell of a tight end for this team. the rookie out of Penn State. And I just don't know if in the Tennessee, if they fall behind, much like we saw in the Denver game and much like we saw in the Rams game, if they can come from behind with the struggles of the offense, the struggles of Cam Ward. And Cam Ward hasn't been accurate, but it's not all his fault. I think that he shares the blame with the O-line. In fact, you can make a case the O-line's even the greater reason why Tennessee's offense is sputtering. So I think Indy's the side here. Especially when you look at, even though you worry about the Colts maybe in a little bit of a flat spot off 2 big home wins, how do you back Tennessee? Tennessee, since November of last year, is 0-8 straight up, 1-7 against the spread. Their last 8 games, their last 11 home games here in Music City, they have failed to cover the number. That's right, 11 straight home games. Tennessee is 0-11 against the spread in their last 11 home games. So I was part of the early money move to the Colts when they were 2.5, 3. I still like them at 4. What I would do, though, maybe is if you didn't bet it already, maybe put them in a money line parlay piece, because I do like them to win this game. Too many issues, in my opinion, with the Titans, even if this is a potential flat spot for the Colts. Philip, what do you think here in Tennessee?
Yeah, you know what? It does have a little bit of a trap game written on it for me with the Colts a little bit here, but here's the reason why I don't really care about that is the Titans rush defense is terrible and Jonathan Taylor's hot. I think that the Colts are going to control the line of scrimmage, and you saw them bust out a few 70-yard runs, from Jonathan Taylor. They just seem to, Shane Steichen is really impressing me with his play calling, and I watched this game pretty closely here. Daniel Jones tried to have that one Daniel Jones moment where he almost threw that pick, but other than that, I mean, man, the guy, he's putting the ball where it needs to go. The run game is there. It's relevant. I just don't see the Titans being able to slow up the run game. And I think that with that being said, the Colts, they control the clock. And I think that this is kind of a game where, the total, it'll be interesting with this Titans offense because, that's on the other side of the ball for the Titans. They're just not impressing me, and you're not seeing much. You mentioned it. That offensive line is horrid. So, the total, not really sure here, but I think the Colts get this done winning by more than 4 here.
All right, Atlanta and Carolina next up. We've got Atlanta 5.5-point road favorites, 44 the total in this game. Cashed a ticket with the Falcons last week. Really like that spot, right? Plus points. They lost a tough one against Tampa Bay in their first game. Going on the road against a Minnesota team that's playing on a short week, coming off the Monday nighter against Chicago, where they beat the Bears. With that late fourth quarter surge by J.J. McCarthy, which is really the only good quarter he and the offense has played so far this season for the Minnesota Vikings. And then Atlanta was able to shut them down. I was impressed with the Atlanta defense. I really was. Now, maybe it was more unimpressive was Minnesota's offense last Sunday night, but still, you got to give Atlanta's defense credit. And Bijan Robinson against a team that I didn't expect Bijan Robinson to have that much success running the football, but Minnesota's defense had trouble, obviously, stopping not just Bijan Robinson, but Tyler Algier as well, because obviously they use the tandem at running back here for Atlanta. We'll see if that keeps going here against this Carolina Panthers team in this game. One thing to point out with Carolina is the defense is still a major concern for this Panthers team. You look at last week against Arizona, and Arizona is still able to pretty much march the football and put up points. It was late in the game when I think Arizona got the big lead, and then they got complacent. So it feels like, what's the old term? Empty calories. That's what it feels like with the Carolina stats in that Arizona game last week. Like, so much of it was when they were down big, and here's Bryce Young piling up points and touchdown drives and all in garbage time. And here he is moving the ball. It's a horrible beat, by the way, if you took Arizona minus the points in that game. Terrible to lose that bet considering they were in control most of the game. But how much do you make of Bryce Young getting things going when, Arizona's probably sitting in prevent, probably fell asleep with a big lead. So I don't really want to make it sound like Carolina turned a corner with that near comeback last week against Arizona. I think some of that was, again, the Cardinals kind of falling asleep there with the big lead. But they hung on 27-22. Proof in the pudding, Philip, is the fact that, yes, Bryce Young was moving the ball, got him back to within 5 points. But when they got the ball back on the onside kick, they got the onside kick recovery down 5, and they got another chance to have the ball to go down in there and win the game, if you can believe it. Carolina last week, despite being down by a score of 27-9 at one point. They got the 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes. They recovered the onside kick, And yes, Bryce Young is moving the ball back-to-back touchdown drives, but with the game on the line and the game pressure there, and Arizona dialed back in defensively, knowing that, hey, we got to wake the fuck up. We're only up by 5 here. We give up a touchdown. We're blowing this thing and we're losing. He couldn't get it done. So that's why I say be careful reading too much into the fourth quarter rally that Carolina pulled off. Yeah, he scored 2 touchdowns in garbage time against maybe a little bit of a soft defense that maybe took their foot off the gas with the big 27-9 lead. When they got the onside kick recovery and they got the ball, Carolina down 5, they couldn't punch it in and he couldn't move the football. And that's what you'd be careful with. That might have just been piling up points, piling up yards against a quarterback that obviously was playing a defense that kind of took their foot off the gas. There's been a lot of money toward Atlanta. This opened 2.5, up to 5.5. I don't know if I can take it at the current number because I've got a small Atlanta bet in pocket at -2.5, -5.5. I don't love laying points with Raheem Morris on the road. I just don't. He's still not one of my favorite coaches. He can screw up clock management. Some of his decisions in game are not the best. For Carolina, you are talking about an 0-2 team. Hell, maybe even against a prevent defense, they take some level of confidence from nearly coming back against Arizona last week. I think Atlanta, if you got the early number, good on you. I think they probably win this game, but if they win by 3 or 4, it wouldn't shock me because I just don't feel Atlanta is one of those teams. And I like Penix Jr., but let's not act like this has been an explosive passing offense here in the first 2 games with Michael Penix. It's one thing to take them +3.5 in a good spot last week at Minnesota. It's a different thing to say, yeah, lay 5.5 and expect them to win by a touchdown or more on the road against a desperate team. It's a different animal. So I lean Atlanta, but I don't like it as much at the current number. What do you think here, Phil, with Atlanta, Carolina?
Yep, I agree. If you got in on this early at 2.5, I'd feel a hell of a lot better. But you know what? Division game here.
And division dogs long term, which we talk about, profitable.
Yeah. These teams know each other. The only thing that I know that I feel good about is this Falcons defense. They've been great through week 1 and 2. They have the second best scoring defense in the league right now, letting up 14.5. Panthers, like you said, they might have a little bit of momentum from last week, and but at the same time here, I don't trust this Panthers team at all either. I don't think Bryce Young is going to be thrown it 55 times again either. I think they're going to try to get Chuba Hubbard involved, and I think a lot of the success of the Panthers is going to be predicated on Chuba Hubbard in the running game. So. With that being said here, I don't love this -5.5 here. I actually would lean towards the Panthers at home plus 5.5 here, and I would take an under here. I just think the Falcons defense is going to show up, and I think the Panthers are going to do just enough to keep it close.
And here's the thing: Atlanta should be able to run the football on Carolina. Carolina's run defense has not been good, and you're going to.
Bijan's looked great.
Yeah.
So agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that, and not to mention because you look at the matchup of the Atlanta running. Atlanta's averaging 143.5 rushing yards per game. They're averaging 4.3 yards per carry, and here's Carolina giving up 141 rushing yards per game, 5.2 yards per carry. They're 27th in the NFL in yards per carry allowed, 5.2. That's not what you want when you're going up against a team that will run the football. Like this is not Penix that carries the team in the passing game. Not at all. They want Algier and Bijan Robinson to be a big part of it. So that's a problem for Carolina if they don't shore up that leaky run defense here in this one. All right, Raiders and Commanders. We've got Washington, 3-point home favorites, 43.5 the total here in this game. Obviously, the big news is it was actually just confirmed earlier this afternoon. Jaden Daniels out for the Washington Commanders. He will not start for them in this game, which means the former Raider against his old team will get the nod here for Washington at quarterback. Yes, that would be Marcus Mariota getting the start here at quarterback for the Washington Commanders in this game. Washington, disappointing setback for them. They're 1-1, nothing to be panic about, but it was very disappointing the way they played against Green Bay, although that could be a reflection that maybe the Packers are really good. But nevertheless, the Commanders struggled. Jaden Daniels was under duress. The defense had trouble with the Packer offense in that game. So Commanders looking for a bounce back spot here. Just looking at the situational elements of this football game, Philip, you can't deny them. that it's an advantage Washington in that regard. Commanders played Thursday night last week at Lambeau Field. They've got the little bit of the extra time, to get ready for this game. So 10 days off between games, kind of like a mini bye week here for Dan Quinn and the Washington Commanders. And meanwhile, here's the Las Vegas Raiders having that real brutal game against the Chargers. Brutal offensively. I thought the defense kind of hung in there, even though, Justin Herbert played well. That offense was miserable. And that's what sometimes you get with Geno Smith. You get a good game against New England. You get a bad game the next week against the Chargers. And he was bad. The whole offense was bad. The O-line didn't do him any favors, though, either. I mean, the Chargers were living in the backfield pretty much the entire night. And that was a tough offensive showing for the Raiders. So now they played Monday night, and not just Monday night, but they played late on Monday night, 7 Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern time. And now you got to play an early Sunday afternoon kickoff, 1 Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. That's a tough spot scheduling-wise for Pete Carroll and the Las Vegas Raiders here. I know the numbers come down. Washington opened 5.5-point home favorites. It's 2.5, 3 in most spots because of the fact Daniels is out. I think I'm very interested now in the better number with Washington, -2.5, -3. And you got the little element, too, of Mariota against his old team. For one game, maybe he steps up. Now he's got to worry about Max Crosby and that pressure that he's going to see from the Raider defensive front. But he's got the athleticism. He can move around a little bit. He's not a statue in the pocket. I'm very much probably going to end up on Washington in some form here. I like the value. I like the number. I think it's certainly a better situational advantage for Washington with the extra time to prepare from the Thursday nighter last week. And here's Las Vegas playing late Monday night and now having to play early Sunday afternoon. So it's Washington or nothing at -3 or better. What do you think here, Phil, with Raiders Commanders?
I like what you said about, Mariota kind of being almost like a surprise element coming in one game versus old team, so provide almost like a little bit of a spark, that guy's going to be playing for something here. I'm curious, this Commanders defense though. And this is where I kind of it's tough for me to tell because you don't know which Geno you're going to get. And through what you said it through week 1 and 2, you get a good game versus the Patriots.
It was everything, Phil. I don't know how much you watch because you're a father and a husband and you got a kid and you can't always stay up late. You've told me the stories of Son logs on the couch before.
Yeah,
late at night 'cause he's tired. But I'll say this: it was ugly. I mean, he's throwing 3 interceptions. Missing his receivers, overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys. It was the whole gamut for Geno. It was
I watched the highlights of that Chargers Raiders game, and man, I mean, he just. It's almost like he gets this sort of confidence, and then he kind of gets overconfident with some of these throws, especially that pick in the end zone. You know what I mean? And those are killers. And you know what? The only thing I'm just thinking is that as a quarterback, after a game like that, you rein it back a little bit now. So I think Geno's going to try to really protect the ball here. He knows what he has to do in order to win this game. And it seems like the Raiders offense really, they have their ups and downs here. Don't trust them enough. You know what? For me, it's the same thing. It's Washington or nothing. I think Mariota is going to provide a little bit of a spark here. Commanders are nothing for me here. What do you think about this total, though?
The total is I'm kind of neutral on the total.
Me too.
I'm kind of right now. Here's the thing that I would say is that with Washington, their run defense, they did hold. The one good thing about Washington is Josh Jacobs didn't do a whole lot for Green Bay last week in that game. Now, was that just a matchup advantage that Green Bay went to in the air? Washington's numbers against the run this year are actually pretty, and they had issues at times stopping the run last year, but this year, 3.9 yards per carry, it's not bad. 104.5 rushing, that's middle of the pack. I still think now we'll see how productive they are because the offensive line was a disaster for the Raiders last week. They played terribly, and as a result, not only did Geno struggle, Philip, but Ashton Jeanty couldn't run the football.
Right.
They couldn't get him going, but I think they will try to get him going here. Take pressure off Geno, test that Washington defense against the run. So a prop to maybe look at, because I agree with you fully. You got to take some of the heat off Geno Smith, and how do you do that?
Right.
Run the football more. I think maybe a Jeanty over rush attempts prop does make some sense to me in this game. I think the Raiders could look in that direction.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Tom Brady has a little insight from some of the interviews. Maybe
I
he'll
know.
sit in the
And they're making a big deal of that, but
They
it
are.
is kind of a shady look. Like this guy's going to be
Yeah.
talking to coaches and doing his game prep for the broadcasts he's doing, and he's going to be talking to teams that have the Raiders on their schedule. And here's
Yeah.
Tom Brady and basically talking to Chip Kelly, for crying out loud, during the game about what plays are going on.
Right. Right.
It's kind of, you understand why, if he doesn't get much info from coaches, why that would be when he's
Exactly.
talking to them to prep with his little buddy there, Burkhardt.
Yeah,
before the
so.
games on Fox. So, like I said, it's definitely, it's just an odd look to see that,
Yeah,
no doubt.
it is.
Good segue talking Packers, which was Washington's last opponent, because here they are now, Green Bay and Cleveland. Green Bay 7.5-point road favorites, 41.5 the total. Before we get all carried away with Green Bay looks awesome, they look like maybe the best team in the NFL through 2 weeks, and that's not a crazy thing to say. They really have looked that good. Before we get carried away and say, let's unload the mortgage, laying 7.5 here with Green Bay, this is a very, very concerning spot for me. Like, you're coming off 2 big home wins. You put all your eggs in the basket of that Detroit game, team that dominated you last year. You're trying to set the tone for the new season. You dominated the Detroit Lions. And then you had a Thursday night primetime game at home against another team that was a litmus test for Green Bay, team that made the playoffs last year. Hell, team that made the NFC Championship game last year, the Washington Commanders, and they played another great game. Now you go on the road for the first time this year, I might add, because they played at Lambeau the first 2 games, and you're laying a big number against Cleveland. Flat spot city potential here for the Green Bay Packers. That being said, I don't know if I trust the matchup enough to take Cleveland, because I lean Cleveland. I think it's a bad, tricky spot for Green. I don't want to say bad spot, but tricky spot for Green Bay. And it is, they got to win by 10 or more now, just about. But I worry about that Cleveland offense against that Green Bay front that's looked so disruptive. Like, they have been blowing up the line of scrimmage so far. And it's not all about Micah Parsons being there and his production. It's about how he being on the D-line opens up Rashawn Gary and opens up the other players on that D-line to make an impact, because everyone's focusing their attention on Micah Parsons. That is how he's made this defensive front better for the Green Bay Packers. And with this offensive line of the Cleveland Browns, I really do worry about it, because Parsons has a great matchup. The Browns may not have Jack Conklin, the right tackle. He missed the Baltimore game. Joe Flacco looked like he was facing pressure most of that game. Didn't exactly handle it well. And when you look at the left tackle spot too, Jedrick Wills, what else is new for the Browns? He's been always having injuries. So you're talking about potential of Parsons and Gary and these real good pass rushers. And because Parsons is there, it's opened up freedom for Gary to get in there and get to the quarterback. Old man Flacco at 40 years old, is he going to get out of that? I'm not so sure. So I don't love the matchup for the Green Bay defense against the Cleveland offense, especially in the trenches in this game. I don't like it at all for Cleveland, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So that's what's concerning to me. I kind of want to take the Browns in this spot. I do, because this is sometimes one of these situations that we've seen it with LaFleur too. I can think of games, I think it was last year, Philip, or 2 years ago, but I still remember a game down in Jacksonville, and they're supposed to beat up this team on the road, and there they are fiddly fooling around, and they're battling just to escape with a win in that game against Jacksonville. I worry about that kind of thing happening here, for as good as they're playing. But man, that offensive line for Green Bay's got problems. Can't run the football, and you're going up against a defensive front of Green Bay that's been absolutely spectacular. And again, if Jordan Love and the offense move the football decently enough, and put Cleveland in a situation where they're playing catch-up down by double digits, I don't know if Cleveland's going to have the offensive attack to come back through the back door against that Green Bay defensive front. Now, one thing that is a negative here for Green Bay is Tucker Kraft's been a huge part of why this offense in the passing game has been very good, and he's looking more and more likely that he'll be out for this game.
Really?
Didn't practice on Friday. Yeah, didn't practice today either. He's missed practice a couple days. Now, they got Luke Musgrave. They've got other options at tight end, but just the way Tucker Kraft's played, it would be somewhat of a loss for the Green Bay Packers if he doesn't suit up. So we'll see if I move on this before kickoff on Sunday. I kind of like this spot for Cleveland, and even in the loss against Baltimore, deceiving final score just a little bit. 41 to last week's loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, it looks like a blowout on paper, 41-17. But if you look at the box score, Jackson did throw the ball well, 225, and the secondary did get hurt a little bit, but they put the clamps down on Derrick Henry. He only had 23 rushing yards for Baltimore last week. So, Myles Garrett's playing great to start the year. He has been a force to be reckoned with, and he'll be trying to get after Jordan Love. So, I kind of lean under in this game. The total's kind of low at 41.5, but I could see it staying under. I like the spot for Cleveland. I hate the spot for Green Bay. But, man, the matchup of Cleveland O-line versus Green Bay D-line really, really does concern me for the Browns here. Philip, what do you think, Green Bay, Cleveland?
Yeah, what you just articulated is exactly why I think, if anything, in this game, gosh, man, I want to lean towards an under here. But this seems like a Browns team that's going to pull out all the tricks in the hat. They're at home, and trust me, being a Packers fan, I've seen this before where – it's like, we're looking so
just
good.
Get everyone believing and buying in, and this is the game where there's a little bit of a scare, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I've seen it too many times. The only thing that I'm hanging my hat on right now is what you said about this Cleveland Browns offensive line versus this Packers D line. I think that's going to cause fits.
Having issues at both tackle spots is a real concern for the Browns.
Exactly. And then also the other thing too, I saw this somewhere, the Ravens only had 2 sacks all last game with them, and through 3 quarters held them to 10 points. You only could think that the Packers are going to get the Flacco and stop the run a little bit more than that. So I think, if anything here, the 2 knowns for me is that the Green Bay D line is going to get after that Cleveland offensive line, and the Browns front 7 concerns me with the Packers run game and Myles Garrett getting to Jordan Love. If Kraft's out, you also have Jaden Reed out. Packers are losing some weapons here. I think, if anything here, I'm leaning an under here, but this could be a really weird game to watch, to be honest. I think an under here, and man, I could see the Packers sneaking one out here by less than 7.5 at this point. So I'm not super confident on that, but I think an under here is definitely in play.
All right, Cincinnati, Minnesota, which we thought coming into the season was going to be this great matchup of Joe Burrow versus the next maybe great quarterback for Minnesota, J.J. McCarthy. And instead, neither man is going to be playing here in this game. Both out due to injuries, and as a result, now we get Jake Browning and Carson Wentz instead, head-to-head here. Minnesota, 3-point home favorites, 42.5 the total in this game. Browning is... Gosh, when he plays, you get a little bit of everything, man. He can look really good at times. And look what he did for Phillips' team total as well with the Bengals last week, which was his best bet on the show. Jake Browning came through for you, man, with that. Jake Browning, man. With Joe Burrow,
when you got those weapons,
Philip Nelson's Bengals team total over best bet on the show last week.
Hey, when you got those weapons, man, it's funny. I actually, on one of my fantasy teams, I saw Browning. I'm going to pick him up because when you got those weapons, all you got to do is sling it around, and the defense is going to not, the defense will be the defense. So, sling it around and trust me, Browning came out the year, I think, after I did. So I was very, I knew who he was, and he slings it around. He was a great player for Washington.
I see. That's where we disagree. I don't think he was great for a while. I thought that there were games where he struggled a bit. He was good at times. I thought there was always some of those games against the better teams. You know what it was?
He put up the numbers, though, right? Didn't he? I thought Washington had...
Yeah, his numbers were solid, but I found when that year he faced Alabama in the playoff, and it's just like
right.
He struggled big time. And that to me was always the concern when he got to the NFL.
Right.
He faces good professional teams and good defenses. Would he be able to play well? And I thought at Washington there were too many times against a really good defense he struggled. So that was my concern when it come to the NFL. But look, he's also, and I remember last year when he filled in for Burrow, there'd be times he'd moving the ball, scoring touchdowns. But the problem is, for every great drive and every great touchdown, you'll get a terrible decision and a terrible throw. And you did get some of that last week too, because he did have 3 interceptions against Jacksonville last week, but they overcame it. And he, put the drive together when he had to, when they were trailing in the last couple minutes to win that game. So give him credit. He can play. How's he going to handle the Brian Flores blitz schemes?
Right.
Because they're going to throw so much pressure at him. And this is on the road, too, in Minnesota, in that loud environment, US Bank Stadium. That does bother me a little bit. How's he going to handle that? What if they throw blitzes like crazy, try to confuse him? That's where the interceptions could come into play. I actually think Jake Browning to throw an interception is a great prop if he can find it out there. I think he will in this game. I do lean Minnesota a little bit. And I'm not a big Carson Wentz fan, but it's -3 at home. I think they have the better defense still. You can't blame the defense last week. Now, Bijan Robinson did run on them a little bit, but it wasn't a big game for Penix Jr. throwing the football against that Minnesota secondary, which has played all right so far. And Cincinnati, can they get Chase Brown going? Their running back, we'll see. But when you look at this Minnesota defense, and how they fare. Now, the run defense numbers have to improve. So is this going to be a game where the Bengals, who have not run the football at all, they have not run the football at all this year very well. So it's kind of Minnesota's run defense hasn't been nearly as good, but Cincinnati's not running the football well at all. So something's got to give in this matchup. I think at the end of the day, you've got Cincy off back-to-back kind of fortunate wins, fortunate to beat Cleveland 17-16, fortuitous to beat Jacksonville 31-27. Now you're going on the road. You got Minnesota off that Sunday night stinker 22-6 against Atlanta. Carson Wentz is mistake prone too. I get it. Totally get that. But he gets to work with KOC, Kevin O'Connell. Maybe he can help, expunge some of those mistakes and interceptions out of Wentz. And I just think for Browning on the road against a blitz-heavy defense, loud environment, he could make a few more mistakes in a game like this than Carson Wentz, even though there's high upside and with the ability to throw the football from Browning. And sometimes Wentz, in his years as a backup, hasn't exactly lit it up, but he's in a good situation. He's got weapons around him. He's got a run game. He's got an O-line that's pretty good and a great offensive-minded head coach. So I think given the spot, given my issues still with Cincinnati on defense, and Jacksonville certainly put that on display, that Cincinnati defense is not fixed. Yeah, you shut down Cleveland. Big fucking deal. You got ripped by Trevor Lawrence last week. Jacksonville had a lot of success moving the football against Cincy's defense. So I'm not sold the Bengals' defense is fixed just yet. At -3 or better, I like the Vikings here at home. What do you think here, Philip? Bengals, Vikings.
I agreed with everything you just said. And just to keep this just short and sweet, I think the biggest piece of news that came out of actually Minnesota today is that Christian Darrisaw practiced today. And that left tackle versus the Falcons was getting crushed. That guy was getting crushed. And
he's a difference maker. The offensive line, it's unreal, Phil, and I've talked about him for years, Darrisaw, how different and better it is him on the field versus off the field.
Exactly. And so, you know what? I think after that dud of a performance on Sunday night for Minnesota, I think this is a key bounce back game. KOC, Wentz has a lot to prove, just like Mariota here. Sometimes the backup quarterback, in that first game, they're ready to go, man. And I think Wentz, he's had a long journey back. His if I remember correctly, though, his return in Kansas City was a pretty ugly game. But I just think that this is kind of a little bit of a different situation here with the weapons. Remind me, is Addison coming back this week or is he back week 4?
I think Addison's out. Well, let me just double check on that. Just want to make sure we give everyone the right info. But, with Jordan Addison. Yeah, Jordan Addison looks like he's out for one more week because I'm
more game.
Jefferson,
Okay.
Naylor, and Thielen are the top 3.
Got it. Well, hey, you know what? On the other end of the spectrum here, I agree with you. Flores' defense is going to give them fits, and especially a backup quarterback coming in first start in Minnesota. I'm hammering the Vikings here, and I actually do think that. I don't know about this over. Because of both these quarterbacks, we just don't have enough of a sample size yet.
But you also could get interceptions and pick sixes and turnovers to set up short fields for the offense. I'm telling you what, this total was 47.5 before both quarterbacks were ruled out, Burrow and McCarthy.
Yeah.
Put it this way. What have we seen from Minnesota's offense with J.J. McCarthy so far? What have we seen? It hasn't been great. So how much of a drop-off is it truly from J.J. McCarthy to Carson Wentz?
Well, exactly.
When they've struggled for 7 of 8 quarters, they could do nothing pretty much on offense in Minnesota.
Right.
And now we see this total with these 2 backups, which was 47.5, now down to as low as 42. I'm going to take a shot with the over at the deflated number.
Yeah, no kidding. And also, like you said, Darisaw being that big of a difference maker, and Wentz. I have a gut feeling, man. I think when a backup quarterback gets an opportunity, they really, really focus in and they try to make the most of that situation of that opportunity they get. So you know what, shit, man, I'm with you. Like let's hammer the Vikings in and over here.
42. I mean, if both teams get 21, it's a winner. And I think
Right.
that's still possible in this game. No weather. You're indoors in the dome there in Minnesota. So, like I said, I think there is value over the total, even with Browning versus Wentz instead of obviously Burrow versus McCarthy. All right. This is one of the games of the weekend for sure. Playoff rematch. These teams met obviously in the divisional round last year. LA Rams, Philadelphia Eagles, Philly -3.5. 44.5 the total in this game. The Rams, man, last year they didn't go away. They were driving to maybe steal that win last year in the playoffs against Philadelphia, but they fell short 28-22. I thought Stafford showed why he's a hell of a quarterback, why he's had a hell of a career. He's a gamer. Like that game was not going well for the Rams, and yet there they were hanging around, and there he is driving the football down the field. Unfortunately, they get stopped right at the end, but it was definitely a game that made the Eagles work. There's no question about it. My biggest concern, easily my biggest concern for the Rams here, the run defense. Saquon Barkley just went ape shit last year. Saquon Barkley in the playoff game. 205 rushing yards for Saquon Barkley against the LA Rams in the playoffs last year. And I mentioned when we talked about the Tennessee game that last week, even though the Rams won 33-19 over the Tennessee Titans, that Tony Pollard had 92 rushing yards in that game. He had some success running the football against that LA Rams defense. If Tony Pollard's kind of getting some good gains against you, what the hell Saquon going to do here? So that does really worry me the most about this game for the Rams, even though I am taking the points with them. I do like them here in a kind of a playoff revenge spot. That's not the only reason to like them, though. There is a lot to like about what we're seeing from Stafford. He's playing a very high level of football. They're going to obviously need Kyren Williams to be a little bit more productive on the ground. Obviously going to need one thing that I do love about this Rams team is the duo. We were always worried, right? Would this duo mesh together from a chemistry standpoint? Puka Nacua and Davante Adams. And I thought maybe Davante Adams, I don't want to say the word washed, Philip, but I thought maybe not quite the same guy. He's looked great with Matt Stafford here in the first two games for the LA Rams at receiver. So that's a good thing. I want to note with Philadelphia, Jalen Carter, obviously the stupid moronic thing he did last week with the spitting against the Dallas. Actually, that was a couple weeks ago. He's obviously someone you got to be concerned about. There are still some questions about the Philly defense. And when you look at Philadelphia, they're 2-0. They struggled with Dallas. The Kansas City game looks impressive, but Kansas City's played so poorly these first two games. And let's not forget, Travis Kelce doesn't fumble and have butterfingers down by the goal line against the Eagles last week. That could have been a different game. Kansas City's going in to tie the game right there. And instead, it was a big swing in the game, and the Chiefs never really recovered from that. There's still questions about them being able to win comfortably, against a team that obviously probably has this game circled on their schedule. So I do like the Rams here at +3.5. This would not surprise me that it's a field goal game, that it is a tight game when all things are concerned. I know the Eagles have a great defense, but they still do have some issues at the other corner spot. We like Quinyon Mitchell, and we like Blankenship and DeJean, but I think the other corner spot's been a bit of a problem area for them, and you got to deal with Adams and Nacua. I do think Stafford might be able to have some success here as far as the passing game is concerned. Running the football, we'll see, and I am worried about, the Rams defense getting chewed up on the ground by Barkley again, like they were last year, but I still like what I'm seeing from the Rams, and I like them in this spot at +3.5. What do you think here, Phil? Rams, Eagles?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's going to be a Rams pass-heavy success game, and then an Eagles run-heavy success game here.
Those are the pathways to success. 1,000%.
Exactly.
Right. I totally agree.
With that being said, I think that serious points are going to get put up. So with that being said, I'm leaning an over here. I agree with you here. I think that this is a Rams game that they have this one circled. And I anticipate the Rams D line to kind of give Hurts a little bit of fits here, but I do think that the Eagles are going to kind of rely heavily on the run game here. But I think Stafford's going to sling it around here, so I really like the Rams in this spot too at +3.5 as well, and then over. I think it's going to be a very fun game to watch, and I think both of these offenses are going to light up the scoreboard.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I didn't mention the total, but I think the over makes sense. I mean, 50 points last year in the playoff game between these two teams. So
Saquon rips off a few big ones, and Stafford, Devontae Adams, Puka. I see this one kind of being a firework game, and I'll eat my words next week if it's wrong. But this is a game that I can't wait to watch, just because I think there's going to be a lot of offensive fireworks between these two teams.
And it's funny because last week there was a lot of offensive fireworks in the NFL. Week 2 was a huge over week. Last week. And week 1 was actually very heavy to the under, and then it was pretty much the opposite in week 2 with just a ton of overs, ton of high-scoring games. I mean, in the early games last week, only the Jets-Bills stayed under the total. Every other 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern game went over the total last week.
Wow.
It was just a really, really a high-scoring week. And I've got a theory as to why that is. We saw it in the Giants-Cowboys crazy game last week, that the landing zone and the revamped kickoff, a lot of teams are getting the ball, at the 35, 40-yard line when they start. And with these fucking kickers now that have the leg of Gandhi right now, like just unbelievable, as far as that's concerned. They can drill these 65, in some cases 70-yard field goals, especially Aubrey for Dallas. Like 1 or 2 first downs, you're thinking field goal range already. And that's good news probably for over bettors. This paradigm shift that now we got coaches attempting these 50, 60-yard field goals with regularity. And that's good news if you're betting overs, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I heard them on ESPN talking. This is the first time ever that defenses are actually playing differently because of this. They know now that these guys, they might just try to get into field goal range. If it's 3rd and long and they're coming up on field goal range, we're going to play them a little bit tighter. We're going to change our scheme as opposed to keeping the ball in front of us. And you know what, my head coach and offensive coordinator at the Fleet, Mike Martz and John Kitna, if that was the case, I know for a fact they would call deep shots all day long. If they knew that a defense was playing differently because they're scared of giving up 3, they would take advantage of that. So I think that's kind of interesting. And maybe the Giants, God, that game was nuts, but they're taking those moon shots all day long too. So I don't know, man. I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up about these overs.
Yeah, and I think that's why, take advantage of this. It wouldn't shock me if this is another week where there's more overs. Now, I don't expect it to be quite as, heavy as it was last week, where it was just, a ton of overs. I think it ended up being like, let me count it up here on the fly, but it was a ton of overs. Let me just see. It was 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, 6-1, 7-1, 8-1. 9-1, 10-1, 11-1, 11-2, 11-3, 11. It was 11-5 for overs last week in the NFL. So yeah, a lot of overs, and I think this is something to keep an eye on moving forward. Speaking of overs, this is a game I like over. Pittsburgh, New England. We got Pittsburgh 1.5-point road favorites, 44.5 the total. I've seen New England's defense 2 weeks in a row, and I don't think it's that great. And I think they're missing Christian Gonzalez in the second. The secondaries really had their issues. Like, they are giving up big passing plays. They're very fortunate that Miami's defense stinks, or they would have lost that game to the Dolphins last week because, Tua and the passing game got going last week against the Patriots. So I have concerns about going up against Aaron Rodgers. And I know it's been a slow start for him and Metcalf, that combination in particular. But it wouldn't shock me totally if he gets that going and gets that rolling a little bit here in this game. Against the Patriots. And then you talk about a defense that certainly hasn't been as good as a lot of people thought. I think this Pittsburgh defense constitutes that. I mean, here's Justin Fields and the Jets, who went up and down the field against the Steelers, turned around and did absolutely nothing, bupkis, squat against the Bills last week. And then again last week, Pittsburgh's defense against Seattle, there's Sam Darnold. Now, Sam Darnold did have a couple of interceptions, but other than that, when he wasn't turning it over, Seattle was moving that ball for most of that game on that Pittsburgh defense. So what's happened here? What's wrong? The Steelers defense has certainly not played to the level a lot of people thought. So I think this is over at 44.5. I don't really trust what I've seen from either of these two defenses so far. From a side perspective, New England lost to the Raiders at home. They barely survived a pretty rough Miami team that's got all kinds of issues. I'd probably lean Pittsburgh a little bit here in a bounce back spot. We're only asking them to win the game. We're not asking them to win by margin. Off a tough loss to Seattle. Tomlin kind of got after them following that loss to the Seahawks. So I think from a side perspective, I'd look toward Pittsburgh here in this spot. What do you think here, Phil? Steelers, Patriots?
My boy Mike Tomlin here, and I saw this stat somewhere, and I'm trying to find it. But God, Mike Tomlin, I saw that he's like 65, 39, and like 4, coming off of being a betting underdog for his career, and coming off a disappointing loss here. I kind of chalked that game up with the Steelers as just a bad freaking game. That special teams fluke play that gave up a touchdown. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's not the issue here, but the fact that the Steelers cannot run the ball is a little bit concerning here. But given that the Patriots defense hasn't looked great, I agree with you here. I think this is a great opportunity for Steelers to bounce back here. Two mysterious teams to me, but I just think that between Rodgers and Tomlin coming off of a bad game, I see them bouncing back here, and I like this over as well. Drake May has played great still. I think the Patriots have a tremendous opportunity to run the ball. The Steelers cannot stop the run either. So I think it's going to be another game where we see an over here, but I do think the Steelers pull this one out.
All right, Jets and Buccaneers. We got New York, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay 6.5-point home favorites, 43.5 the total in this game. I mean, certainly you're getting value on the Jets because everybody saw what happened against the Bills, and it was ugly, and they got absolutely steamrolled. But let's not forget that they were right there in the game and had every chance to win the week before that against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So which Jets team is it going to be? The one that was competitive and nearly beat Pittsburgh, or the one that got just absolutely obliterated last week by the Buffalo Bills? This is another one where, I do like Tampa as a team. How do you not like Baker Mayfield and what we're seeing? But there's concerns. The spot's a concern. You played Monday night in Houston at back-to-back road games to start the year, you pulled out big time, down to the wire, intense victories both times. Atlanta when Younghoe Koo missed that field goal in week 1, and then last week with just a brilliant drive in the final 2 minutes by Baker Mayfield to get into the end zone and beat Houston with the game-winning touchdown. And now you're laying a significant number back home. And this is a spot, too, if I'm not mistaken. Tampa Bay laid an egg in last year in this similar situation. I think they played a home game in week 3 when they were 2-0 at the time, and it was against Denver, only the third game of Bo Nix's rookie season, and they got blasted by Denver at home. I remember that game last year. So, you worry about the flat spot. You worry about them, maybe after 2 big wins, not being at their absolute best here in this game against a Jets team that, Aaron Glenn just called them out, unacceptable the way we played. Everybody played poorly. Coaches didn't get them ready for the game. All that BS and jargon you always hear from the coaching staff after a game like that. So you would expect the Jets to be looking to play better. Yeah, I'm looking at it now, Philip. It's right in front of me. They beat Washington 37-20 at home, Tampa Bay, week 1 last
Lions.
year. They went on the road and beat Detroit 20-16, another close game, and then they got obliterated at home by Denver 26-7. They were flat as a pancake in that game. And so as you can tell, I'm leaning Jets here. I also don't like that Tampa Bay's got injuries on the offensive line. They were already without Tristan Wirfs. They lost another key O-lineman on the right side during that Houston game last week. So they're a little bit depleted on the offensive line. They got to try to overcome that. They were able to do that last week. Baker with the big run on 4th down to keep that drive alive. But this is a different point spread range too. Tampa was an underdog against Houston. Tampa Bay was a 1-point favorite against Atlanta. But now you're asking them to win by a touchdown or more. And there's O-line concerns. I still don't love the Tampa defense. It's okay, but it's not great. We did see Houston move the football for a good stretch last week against them. So I think from a spot perspective and with the situation with some of these injuries on the O-line for Tampa Bay, I am definitely looking at Jets or nothing here in this game. Phil, what do you think here? Jets, Bucks.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Once again, another backup quarterback getting an opportunity here. Gosh, the
And I
Jets.
don't mind Tyrod Taylor for one game. Yes,
Yeah,
I
I
don't need
don't
to
either.
mention.
You know what
Yes,
I
no
mean?
Justin Fields.
That's
It's
another thing.
Tyrod Taylor at quarterback.
We
But I
have a
don't
guy
mind for
that
one game.
can be an accurate, serviceable backup quarterback here.
Yep.
Buccaneers losing another guy on the offensive line is huge. Obviously, God, man, I tell you what, Baker Mayfield is just the ultimate eraser of mistakes. He proved that on the ground, the way that he was able to run around these guys, make things happen with his legs. He's just a total gamer. I this is one of the more difficult ones. This is a tricky one because God, I'm sitting here and I agree with you. I think this could be a Jets game where Aaron Glenn gets his team, riled up, ready to go after a freaking terrible game, and they go down into Tampa, and Tampa's riding high on this 2-0 cloud. I could also see the Buccaneers just pouncing on them too. I think a lot of this is going to be predicated on if the Jets can run the ball. And they were able to do that week 1. Week 2 is a little bit shaky there. But I agree with you here. I think this is kind of a trap game for the Buccaneers coming off another emotional win, short week. I agree with you here. I'm probably leaning Jets plus 6.5. And if you're going to do that, if I'm taking Jets plus 6.5, I'm expecting a scoring game because the Buccaneers are going to put up points. So I would go with an over along with that as well.
Yeah, I kind of lean the other way. I'm not probably going to bet the total, but I kind of lean under just because with Tyrod, is it going to be more conservative? And there's O-line concerns of the Bucs, and because the one thing Houston did was once those O-line injuries, and look in the final drive they put it together, but still it was a struggle for Tampa Bay in the second half. They were throwing all kinds of pressure at Baker Mayfield because of that testing that O-line. Did the Jets decide to do the same thing? Let's throw pressure and test if this offensive line that's depleted and banged up, if it can hold up against it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I guess the reason why I'm leaning more so over here is because I think that Texans defense is better than the Jets defense. And if the Jets need to bring pressure on Baker, that means that Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka, he's going to he's going to have his matchups. So and that guy is an absolute stud. That guy is an
he's been great.
Stud. So if the Jets need a
man, bet offensive rookie of the year like I did on Emeka Egbuka before.
Emeka. Okay, so that's why that's my main reason, and I think that if I don't know, I don't think this Jets defense is the same as the Texans, which is why I think that the Bucs would put up at least 20, and I don't know, man. This is a tough one, man. This is one of the tougher games for me, but I agree here. If anything, for me, I feel pretty good about the Jets covering.
All right, we got Houston and Jacksonville. Interesting matchup here. We got Jacksonville 1.5-point home favorites, 44 the total here in this game. The Texans, obviously, this is a divisional matchup again. The Texans won both games last year against the Jaguars. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Houston, offensively, look, it's a work in progress for you. The O-line is the big concern on this team. We said that coming into the year, that the offensive line was the biggest concern we had with Houston. It is not close to being one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. CJ Stroud under a ton of duress in that game. They had a great opening drive. They had a great first quarter, touchdown field goal, the first 2 drives against Tampa Bay on Monday night. And then the O-line issue started to come back again for the Houston Texans. That being said, it was still a step in the right direction for the offense. It was certainly better than it was against the Rams in week 1. Now, I still don't love the O-line. We still don't love the way there's not been a consistency at all from Houston in the run game so far this season. Nick Chubb hasn't been easy to get going. They're limited at receiver. It feels like, hey, you shut down Nico Collins and you dare someone else, to make plays in the passing game for CJ Stroud. That being said, you look at the fact they played the Rams, they played the Bucs. I think the Jags probably a little lesser on that defensive scale than those 2 teams. So this could be a game for Houston to have some offensive success. The one thing about your boy, Liam Cohen, new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, is the offense in Trevor Lawrence looks a lot better. You can't say anything bad about it through the 2 games. 26 points, 27 points. He's played well. Still got to limit turnovers, and he had 2 of them last week. But and that you still got to extricate that out of his system. Trevor Lawrence, those interceptions and still decision making does need to improve, especially red zone decision making. Because I think both of them came down near the red zone against Cincinnati last week. But still, he completed 24 for 42, 271 through the air. He did have 3 touchdowns. Travis Etienne has been running the football pretty solid for them, which is good. They're trying to balance this offense a little bit. Now, it's not going to be easy to run it against Houston. Houston's run defense so far this season has been pretty solid, 4.4 yards per carry. Although last week there were times when, Bucky Irving and the other running back, Rachaad White for Tampa Bay, they did get the run game going. And with Cohen, he's going to make sure ETN is part of this offense. It's going to be balanced. It's not going to be all on Trevor Lawrence in the passing game. So when I factor in this matchup, Jacksonville's offense looked solid. I think for Houston's offense, while there's issues on the O-line, I don't think the pass rush or the D-line is that spectacular or that special for Jacksonville. I think Houston could probably have maybe one of their better offensive games this season so far. I'll take a shot over 44 here with Houston and Jacksonville in this game. I think there's a chance it can get over because Jacksonville, to me, looks like an over team. Like it went over the total with Cincinnati. We liked that over last week. The Carolina game stayed under only because Carolina's offense looks kind of shaky so far. But I think Houston can move the ball. It's concerning that Houston's run defense struggled against Tampa, because they really did have issues. And run defense hasn't been much of an issue, but it was last week. And if ETN can run and open up play action for Lawrence, then Jacksonville's got a pathway to points here. So I kind of like the over. I kind of lean Houston here. They're a desperate 0-2 team. They can't go down 0-3. They need this win badly. I'm not ready to back Jacksonville just yet as a favorite. Keep in mind, they only beat a bad Carolina team. And then, of course, they sputtered and found a way to lose against backup Jake Browning in Cincinnati last week. So I kind of think it's a circle the wagon spot for Houston. So Houston and over are my leans here. Philip, what do you think? Texans, Jaguars.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. And, this is another really tough one for me. I just don't see the Texans going 0-3. I just don't see them falling there. Although I will say this is what happens when you have the worst offensive line in football. Yeah. So that's a concerning spot. I think ETN will be a featured player in this game, which, it's funny because in my head, when I ask myself, what unit do I have the most faith in, I would say it's the Jacksonville offense. So with that being said, this is a really tough one for me. I do lean an over here. I agree with you. Jacksonville's an over team, and if the Texans are going to win, they're going to have to put up points. So if there's anything that I feel very confident in, it would be an over here. With that being said, I just don't see the Texans falling 0-3 for some reason, and Jacksonville is just an overall team that I cannot fully trust yet. I think their competition has been different, like you mentioned. So you know what? If anything, I'm leaning Texans here, but I do I love an over in this game.
Texans are a good teaser too, and I'll be using the Texans in some teasers because you can get them in a 6-point teaser up beyond all the key numbers, 3, 6, and 7. You can get it all the way up to plus 7.5 on a teaser, and I don't see Jacksonville winning by more than a touchdown here in this game. So I think Houston's a good teaser leg this week as well. All right, we're on to the late kickoffs on Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Denver Broncos, LA Chargers. This is a good one in the AFC West, one of the best divisions in football, top to bottom. The Chargers, 3-point home favorites, 46 the total. I ain't stepping in front of the Chargers, man. I'm not doing it. They've been excellent. They beat Kansas City, made them look silly. They absolutely destroyed the Raiders. The defense certainly destroyed the Raiders. What's amazing about that performance, and we talked about it, how much Geno Smith struggled. Khalil Mack left that game due to injury. That was supposed to degrade the pass rush for the Chargers a little bit, and yet they were still all over Geno Smith in that game. That D-line looks pretty damn good. And how about Derwin James, man? How good is that guy in the safety position for the Chargers? I've said for years, you keep that guy healthy and he plays 17 games for a full season, he makes your defense so much better. His instincts on the field, reading the quarterback's eyes, being in the right position, knowing when to get his hand out there and, for a PBU, a pass breakup, he's just got phenomenal instincts in that secondary for the LA Chargers. And thank goodness, Philip, he's healthy because he's a great player and he's showing everybody. now that he's finally healthy, what kind of a great player he is. Denver's a hard team to read. The offense looked bad against Tennessee, even though they won. They struggled. Bo Nix struggled. And the defense was pretty good against Tennessee, although I don't know how much you want to read into the defense because Tennessee's offense has been horrid for 2 games in a row. And then they turn around, and last week the offense was a lot better for Bo Nix and the Broncos. Can't blame them. They played well. But what happened to the defense? Jonathan Taylor's running it on them. Daniel Jones didn't punt again in the first half. They're moving the ball up and down against that Broncos defense. That's enough of a concern, what I saw from Denver's defense last week, going up against, obviously, an offense and a quarterback in Justin Herbert, who is very confident so far to start the year. He has looked very good. -3 or less, Chargers are nothing for me. Could this be an over? Now, the thing is, though, Harbaugh runs the ball, and I saw that Raiders game. That they take so much time off the clock. Denver, same thing. They're not exactly a fast-paced team. But you're going to need efficiency, but you could see efficiency here from both of these offenses. So I lean over. I'm just a little bit concerned with just how run-heavy both teams are and how much time likely elapses off the clock when both teams have the football. But I would still lean over, and at -3 or better, it's Chargers or nothing. See, Philip, what do you think here? Broncos, Chargers?
Yeah, I agree with you here. It's going to be really hard to get in front of the Chargers here. However, man, what a matchup. I really think that this Broncos team has a lot to play for, especially after last week. And, man, before the season, we're sitting here talking about elite Broncos defense and this and that, that the Titans are the Titans. But last week, wow. And that's what we need to do a little bit more of uncovering is this Colts team as good as they are, or is this Broncos defense kind of not as good as we?
They got outgained by 150 yards last week by the Colts, Denver.
So yeah. I mean, with that, so I don't know, man. I think this Chargers team, and I agree with you, man. I think this, 2 slower paced teams here. They want to be methodical, run the football. With that being said, man, they're putting these totals are right where they need to be. I think that's a tough one, but I agree with you here. I'm not getting in front of the Chargers. Justin Herbert has been playing phenomenal, man. I tell you what, he knows where to go with the ball. He looks very comfortable, and with that being said, I think the running game's a priority. I think both offenses do pop off a few big explosive plays through the passing game, and I would lean in over here as well. Not getting in the way of the Chargers.
Yeah. The only concern, too, is the Chargers, like the Raiders, they played that late Monday night game, so it's a little bit of a short week for them. And we know I'd usually like the Chargers more on the road than at home. They have no home field advantage in that SoFi Stadium.
Right.
They get so many road fans. So there are some concerns here, but they've been impressive, man. And I'm not stepping in front of them. So I might pass, but I'm just saying if I'm betting the side, it's Chargers and Chargers only. All right, Saints and Seahawks. We've got Seattle 7.5-point home favorites, 41.5 the total. I got Seattle in some money line parlays this week and in some teasers. I think they win this game. I don't think much of the Saints. That being said, the Saints have been more feisty. Give them credit for that than maybe I thought. They never quit against Arizona. They ended up hanging around and had a chance to, tie or win that game late, but Spencer Rattler couldn't get them in the end zone. And even last week against San Francisco, Phil, they're down 26-14, but they don't quit. They get it to 26-21. Rattler's actually been okay. 207 through the air, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions last week for the Saints. They didn't exactly have a huge game on the ground from Kamara, but like I said, there are weapons with Olave and Shaheed, among others, but the defense is a concern for me with the Saints. I mean, the Saints don't have a great defense. Pass rush is lacking at times. You look at, obviously, the fact that, the secondary was gashed pretty well by Mac Jones last week in that loss to the 49ers. I thought it was a nice bounce back from Seattle last week in Pittsburgh. Now, I don't feel comfortable 7.5 laying it with Seattle, but I think they win this game. I've got them in some money line parlays here. Seattle with Indianapolis, Seattle with we'll get to it with Sunday night, but Kansas City, because I do think Kansas City gets off the schneid finally and wins this week. But I do think Seattle and some money line parlay and teaser legs could be the way to go here in this one. 41.5 is interesting because you look at New Orleans in the first 2 weeks of the season, and the first game against Arizona stayed under, but there were 47 last week. Seattle, I still think, could be a pretty good defensive team, still has issues with the offense. So I could make a case both ways over under. I just think 41.5 is low. And after all the barrage of overs last week, it's hard for me to bet under 41.5 unless I have a really good, strong feel that both defenses are going to bring it. Phil, what do you think here? Saints Seahawks.
Well, the Saints can't even cover the spread versus that 49ers team missing several of their key players. You know that they're kind of in a bad spot here. With that being said, I think the Seahawks offense kind of goes off here. I think big games out of freaking Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. I think those guys are going to run all over them. With that being said, you're right. The Saints are a feisty team. They don't go away. And so with that being said, man, I agree with you here. I think an over is good. I don't love 7.5. But man, the Seahawks, they went into Pittsburgh and they had a 2-score win. The Saints team isn't particularly impressive at all. But the NFL is weird, man. And sometimes when you're in these spots, teams let up a little bit, but I like an over here just because I think the Saints are going to be a competitive team in this game. I wouldn't take 7.5 though for the Seahawks. Don't feel confident in that one, but I do lean over here. I'm with you.
I think maybe a Seattle team total over, and I say that because, look, I think Sam Darnold in this matchup at home could probably have success against that secondary with Smith and Jigba, and I think Kupp maybe finally gets going here a little bit for Seattle. And, of course, you've got the running back. Plus, you could get Spencer Rattler on the road in this environment, that crowd against – and Seattle's defense is pretty good. They do have a pretty good defense.
Yeah, they are.
I could see turnovers and pick sixes and mistakes. This could be the Spencer Rattler horror show waiting to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Mike McDonald's been doing a really good job for them with just scheming up things. So, I like him.
Yeah, no, certainly on the defensive side, and he did a good job at Baltimore. That's what got him the head coaching job with Seattle. All right, Dallas, Chicago. Dallas, 1-point road favorites, 50 the total. Now, I'm starting to see potential rain in the forecast, but it's not looking like it's going to be all game type of rain here. But as long as the weather's halfway decent, I like the over here. I really do. I mean, Chicago's defense is just not very good. I mean, we can't even make a big deal of the fact they shut down Minnesota for 3 quarters because Minnesota's offense turned around and looked like ass last week against Atlanta in that loss to the Falcons. So how good is Chicago's defense? They played a real offense last week against Detroit. And how many points did they give up? Felt like Detroit scored on almost every possession last week against that Chicago defense. So the Bears still have issues. Is Jalen Johnson going to be back in their secondary? If he doesn't play, and he's questionable, that's a big deal. You can't afford injuries on a defense that just got absolutely raked in the last game. And the one thing Dallas can do is score points with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens started to get going last week against the Giants. Still can't run the football all that much, but they certainly can throw it. And again, those injuries in the secondary for the Bears, which they've had right from the beginning of the season, are concerning. But this Dallas defense, the real Dallas defense, showed up against the Giants. Still, there's problems. No pass rush, which you expect the pass rush to be weakened once you traded Micah Parsons away. They got Kenny Clark to stop the run, but and run defense has been up and down. Hasn't been great by any stretch of the imagination. But more than anything, teams are throwing on them. Russell Wilson at over 400 passing yards. With Ben Johnson as the head coach, offensive-minded guy, this has to be a spot for Caleb Williams to get it rolling a little bit, doesn't it? And if at home against this defense and this secondary, and the pass rush hasn't been consistent, not to mention even if they do rush the quarterback and Caleb Williams, he's got he's using his legs more, which I do like to see. He's been a willing runner, Caleb Williams, this year, which has been good to see. I think Chicago's got a pathway to putting up points here in this game as well. So over the total for me. I kind of want to take an 0-2 Chicago team here as a slight home dog. Dallas, look what we saw last week. Russell Wilson, man, who looked awful against Washington. He's going up and down the field and carving up that secondary. Now, and Dallas survived and won, but it wasn't because of their defense. I'm not laying 1 point on the road with that defense against a desperate Chicago team. And give me even Ben Johnson. Look, we're finding out, hey, it's not always better on the other side when you're a head coach instead of a coordinator. He's finding that out a little bit, but still, give me him over Brian Schottenheimer in the coaching matchup. So Chicago, I lean that way. I like the over even more. What do you think here, Dallas, Chicago?
Those are my same points I was going to use. Look, Ben Johnson, trust him more than Schottenheimer. these are the Dallas Cowboys. Still here, we're talking about the Giants. What a terrible. I mean, we know who the Cowboys are now. A desperate Chicago Bears team, 0-2 at home. I'm not going away from that. And you know what? If Caleb Johnson isn't going to have any pressure on him, he's going to be sitting there in the pocket, picking them apart, doing his thing. Versus a terrible Cowboys defense that virtually
Caleb Williams. You said Caleb Johnson again.
Gosh, why do I keep saying that? It's because I keep messing up Ben Johnson. I keep doing that. So Caleb Williams will carve up this defense. And man, Eberflus, that's going to be another interesting one.
Oh yeah,
going back into Chicago,
Dallas now. Yeah,
right. So no, I think the the Bears here just being a desperate home team here. Give me the over and give me the Bears +1.
And doing the bang-up job he did in Chicago, Matt Eberflus. You're letting Russell Wilson throw for almost 500 yards against your defense last week. So, yeah, not good.
Exactly.
All right, Arizona, San Francisco. This is another interesting one. San Francisco.
Ooh, the Diamondbacks.
Oh, there's my mistake. There we go. Baseball on the mind. Cardinals versus 49ers. There we go. Let's fix that. That's what happens when you're doing sports betting content for 4 fucking major sports throughout the year.
Right.
You're going to get them all mixed up at times. All right, San Francisco, 3-point home favorites, 45.5 the total in this game. Cardinals versus 49ers. Arizona 2-0. I think they've looked okay. They haven't looked great. They had the lead against the Saints. They got to finish better. And that's what their head coach said after that game last week against the Carolina Panthers, because that's 2 games in a row where Arizona has a big lead. They let the New Orleans Saints back into it. They let Carolina back into it. Jonathan Gannon said, that's enough. This can't keep going. We've got to play 60 minutes. We can't just let our foot off the gas pedal. So, we'll see if – and Arizona has gone into San Francisco before and beaten this team. Let's keep that in mind. And I don't know if – I lean Arizona here, right? They're a slight division dog, +3. When you look at the head-to-head series, Arizona won both meetings last year, including 24-23 in San Francisco against this 49ers team. I kind of, and with Gannon kind of getting after them, for the, taking their foot off the gas with a lead in each of their first 2 games, we could see them, play a better 60-minute performance here in this game. We'll see about that. But I think this game could be an over as well. When you look at Mac Jones, for all the slings and arrows that guy has taken, going back to his time in New England, he looked really sharp last week. Now, it was a Saints defense that's got some issues, but he looked good. He's got Kyle Shanahan to work with. He's got weapons to work with. He's in a situation to have some success, a good situation, and he had some success last week. And when you look at the Arizona Cardinals on defense, you played Spencer Rattler and you played Bryce Young. You played 2 quarterbacks and offenses that I don't think are what San Francisco is going to bring to the table, even with the backup quarterback, Mac Jones, playing, because I like the way he played. I like the way the O-line played last week. Again, we'll see if Jawan Jennings is back. He's still been battling injury. Wasn't at practice, so I doubt it. So we're just going to have to see a lot of, Kendrick Bourne, a lot of Ricky Pearsall leading them. How about Jake Tonjes, the tight end now, with obviously Kittle still banged up. But somehow, some way, they pieced together an offense that moved the football pretty well last week against New Orleans and put up points. So I like this over 45.5, +3 or better. I lean Arizona. What do you think here, Phil? Cardinals, 49ers.
I'm on board with you here. Mac Jones looked great. An interesting piece here is Christian McCaffrey. 13 carries, 45 yards or so. I mean, running game not really there, but wow. I never was a huge Mac Jones hater, but this 49ers team, they're piecing this together, and I want to bring up your point again. Cardinals know how to go into San Francisco and win, and I have a little bit more faith in this Cardinals team. However, finishing is going to be a huge thing here for them, and I just 3 points, though. I could see the Cardinals winning this game, which is why, I agree with you. I think an over and the Cardinals +3, I mean, give me all of that. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals win here. I really wouldn't.
6-1, by the way, to the over in the last 7 head-to-head meetings between these 2 NFC West division rivals as well. All right, Sunday night football, Kansas City Chiefs, New York Giants. We've got Kansas City 6-point road favorites, 45 the total. I don't know about laying 6, but as I mentioned earlier, I've got Kansas City and some 6-point teasers, Kansas City and some money line parlays this week. I do think they get off the schneid and win their first game. I think for the New York Giants, this is a tough spot. If the heartbreaker against Dallas to fall to 0-2, you can't get a better performance from Russell Wilson, and you still found a way to lose that game. Now, I am concerned for Kansas City that their O-line has not been great, and Mahomes has been running around. They haven't gotten Pacheco and Hunt going on the ground consistently, and the strength of the Giant defense is the front with Thibodeau and with Abdul Carter and Brian Burns. They can get after the quarterback a little bit. So that's a matchup that worries me with the struggles of the O-line for Kansas City. Talked about how that rookie left tackle, he's got to continue to show what he's capable of. But the right tackle has really struggled for the Chiefs here early in the season. And keep in mind, while people think, the Chiefs aren't the same team, they're 0-2, they're going to take a huge step back. They're playing the Giants, who have issues. When's the last time the Giants, especially in prime time at home, have played well? All I can remember over the years, including the Brian Dable years, is they get these big spots at home, primetime game, good team coming in, and they usually don't perform well in these situations. And that's what bothers me too. Not to mention, before people get all that bent out of shape about the 0-2 struggles to start the year for the Chiefs, let's also keep in mind that they played the LA Chargers and the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They're pretty damn good football teams. You're talking about a Chargers team that's 2-0 that's looked great, and an Eagles team that's 2-0 and won the Super Bowl last year. So this is an opportunity for Kansas City. It feels like it's buy low. I don't trust the Giants. That being said, I'm much more comfortable taking Kansas City and parlay and teaser legs. I don't know about laying 6 on the road, but I'd say buyer beware if you're going to just jump in and fade Kansas City just because they're 0-2. What do you think here, Philip? Chiefs, Giants.
Well, I just don't see. I don't see how the Chiefs don't absolutely come out and crush them. To your point, Chiefs' level of competition, that they've played so far, completely different than the Giants. Chiefs coming off a Super Bowl, 0-2, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, come on. I think the Chiefs, and to your point too, I mean, the Giants on primetime, God, how disappointing. I think this could be potentially where, Russell Wilson played very well last week besides his, crucial turnover. Just stupid mistake there. But, everyone's saying, hey, this could be kind of the last shot. If the Giants go 0-3 here, what are we doing? Why not play Jackson Dart? So I think this is where the Chiefs come back alive. This defense is not the Cowboys defense.
It's a great bet in this game. Not a good bet, a great bet from a prop standpoint. Take Patrick Mahomes over rushing yards. I don't care what the number is.
I mean,
they're going to have a hard time blocking. The Giants do have a good front that can get after the quarterback.
Dude, that's a good
game
point.
to run it. And he's been running more already this year anyway in the first 2 games.
Well, and that's what, what's actually crazy, and this is kind of a little thing that I saw from this game, and I saw some statistic. I can't remember exactly what it was, but Super Bowl last year, Eagles didn't blitz once. They sacked Mahomes, 6 times? This last Sunday, the Eagles blitzed Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. And you want to know why? Where are the weapons? They literally played their hand. They showed their hand. They said, we don't think that your weapons can beat us. And that's where, Rashee Rice being out, Hollywood Brown being out. I mean, that's kind of huge. And you know what, man, when are they going to trade for Tyreek? What everyone's saying that too, but I'm just putting my faith in Andy Reid and in Patrick Mahomes here. But that's a very good point, Ian. Giants D line, man. I mean, they're going to give fits to this Chiefs O line. So you know what? I would almost lay off this -6. I don't love that either, but I think the Chiefs pulled this one out. So I'd almost lean Giants +6, man. Now that you say that, that's a great point about the Giants D line. That's what's been crushing the Chiefs this year is their offensive line. So,
yep. I mean, they've got a problem at left guard. They got that right tackle is horrific, and the left tackle is a rookie. He might be good in time, but he's not there yet. I've seen him. Right. He's not there yet. He's not an elite player at his position. Not even close just yet. I think he's okay. He's getting better, going to get better, but he's not there yet. So there's still issues, and Mahomes is going to have to run. He's been running a lot anyway against the Chargers and the Eagles in the first 2 games. So that is a good prop. Yeah, I would say too, Bet365. And Phil, I know you've got that sports book available to you in North Carolina, North Kakalaki now. You can bet Kansas City double result. It's often a bet I like with the modest favorites when they're laying, 6, 7, 8 points, where double result Kansas City means they lead at halftime and win the game. You don't have to worry about 6 points or them winning by a touchdown. Just win the game. Just lead at halftime and win the game. You cash your bet. So the Kansas City double result might be a pretty good option here if you like the Chiefs. All right, last game, Monday Night Football. This could be one of the best games of this game, and maybe Rams-Eagles on paper, at least to me, could be the best games this week. Detroit and Baltimore. We've got the Ravens 4.5-point home favorites, 53 the total in this game. Will it be the night of the Raven? Look it up. Magic Affair, Night of the Raven, a 90s dance hit. If you don't know what I'm doing here, the singing. But nevertheless, Detroit and Baltimore. This is an interesting one. Detroit looked like they fixed their issues last week. They beat down Chicago, but they were at home. We know Jared Goff and that offense is a different animal at home, right? They love playing at Ford Field, and they piled up the points. We know Dan Campbell and the Lions are undefeated. Keep this in mind in the future, everybody. Undefeated, straight up and against the spread, off a loss, the Detroit Lions, since, I believe, 2023. That's how long it's been since they lost 2 in a row. Since November 2022, Detroit is 11-0 straight up and against the spread off a loss. And obviously that continued because they lost to Green Bay in week 1, and then they bounced back and they pummeled Chicago last week. So they're a great bounce-back team. How will they fare here, though? They're on the road against a really good team. We saw Detroit on the road against a very good team in week 1, and they lost by 14, 27-13, and the offense struggled against that Green Bay defense. What will it be here against Baltimore? The problem is, what do you make of Baltimore's offense? Buffalo carved them up. Buffalo came back from a deficit against them, and the defense struggled with Josh Allen. And then last week, Buffalo against, Baltimore's defense against Cleveland is not really much of a indicator to how good they are because the Browns have a lot of issues on offense so far this season. So how will they handle Detroit? I actually took a small bet on the Lions here. I think it could be a competitive game, close game, plus 4.5. I just feel that Buffalo game with what I saw in week 1 on that Sunday night, I'm a little leery to lay points with Baltimore against a good team, with what I've seen at times. Now, I also think this could be high scoring. I wish the total was not this high. Pretty high total, 53. But I definitely see pathways to both teams moving the football, no question. I think Detroit can have some success, with the Gibbs-Montgomery tandem on the ground, Goff through the air. The O-line was a lot better last week against Chicago. And I think Baltimore with Lamar and Derrick Henry can certainly have their share of success. Keep in mind that Detroit, entering this game, their run defense is given up, let me just see here, 4.1 yards per carry, 106 rush yards per game, middle of the pack. So not great, not terrible, but middle of the pack. Middle of the pack run defense may not go so well still against a very, very dynamic rushing attack that Baltimore can throw at you. So over, and probably just for some entertainment. It's not going to be best bet material, but I think 4.5, 5. I lean Detroit a little bit. I think it would not surprise me if it's a close game. What do you think here, Philip? Monday Night Football, Lions, Ravens.
Yeah, this is a very obviously interesting game. We've kind of seen 2 Lions teams, so far, and that makes this very difficult for me to really kind of be definitive here. I think there's one thing I do know, and that's the Ravens defense isn't necessarily, well, I mean, once again, small sample size. The Browns offense isn't really, anything to be, worked up about here, but I just don't trust this Ravens defense. So, gosh, I agree with you though. This 53 total is kind of throwing me for a loop here, but I'm just going to stick to my gut here. I think that I think the Lions found their groove. They're going to move the ball in this Ravens team. I think the Ravens are going to pound the rock, and I think Lamar is going to run it. Henry's going to run it. They're going to pass it when they need to. But I agree with you. I think the Lions keep this close, man. And 4.5, 5, I really like that. And I even tease this one up for the Lions too, if possible. But I would go over here as well. Just sticking to my guns here, just with what I'm thinking, what I'm saying out loud right now is I think the Lions are going to move the ball, the Ravens are going to run the ball. So, with that being said, here I would go. Once again, like you said, not best bet material, but I think the Lions keep this thing close, and I think it's going to be a high scoring game. So I'd go over.
Thing too is that the Lions on defense have had issues in the past with mobile quarterbacks, and obviously they're getting one of the better ones here in Lamar Jackson. So how they defend Lamar Jackson in the run game is going to be something to keep an eye on, because that has been a bugaboo for Detroit in recent years. Great stuff with Philip Nelson. Another awesome show here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, getting you ready for NFL Week 3. Hope everyone has enjoyed it. Before we wrap it up, time for best bets. 2-0 sweep last week with best bets. Philip had Bengals team total over. I had the Patriots as a small underdog against Miami, and they ended up winning outright. So hopefully we got another 2-0 sweep on deck. Philip, we'll start with you. Best bet for NFL Week 3.
Man, I went back and forth. I was changing my mind during the show and going here and there, but you know what? I think that Jacksonville is an over team, and I think Houston wins here. So with that being said, I think that the Texans need to put up points in order to win this game. I hope that offensive line can hold up. I'm not super scared of this Jacksonville defense, which is why I feel that way. But I think that Jacksonville, Liam Cohen, my boy, I think they put up points as well, but Houston gets the win here. So I'm going to go with a Jacksonville-Houston over for my best bet of the week.
All right, there you go. Jacksonville-Houston over, and you can get that at 43 and a half right now, actually. Yeah, 43 and a half with Houston and Jacksonville. So Jaguars, Texans over 43 and a half for Philip Nelson with his best bet. My best bet here for this card, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings here. I will go money line. Yeah, I will go money line. Minus 145 is still out there with the money line on Minnesota just to win the game. You can go -3 if you want to lay a little bit less of a price, but I think they win. I like how this sets up. They're coming off a tough loss. Cincinnati, 2 wins against Jacksonville and Cleveland, very narrow wins. Yes, Jake Browning's very capable of playing well, and he can move the football. He can throw it, but he's also mistake prone. He had 2 interceptions against Jacksonville. Even though he rallied them to win that game, he still had 2 interceptions, and those blitzing tendencies of Brian Flores and this Minnesota Vikings team does concern me, that Browning might make a few more mistakes here in this game. Not that I'm bullish on Carson Wentz for Minnesota starting for them, but like I said, he's got a good quarterback, a good situation with Darrisaw back on the offensive line, possibly weapons galore, a very solid offensive-minded head coach, and Kevin O'Connell to get him coached up and ready to go. So I will go with Minnesota here, minus 145 on the money line against Cincinnati for my best bet here for NFL Week 3. Great stuff. We hope you enjoyed the show. Hit the like button on the way out. Philip, any last words?
No, man, I think week 2 was a great week. A lot of great matchups, a lot of question marks, man. It's almost like a drama, man, where we're seeing all these different teams, these different identities of these teams. And I think week 3, we're going to get a better understanding as to who these teams are, so we can zero in on some bets here. So really excited for week 3. Another great game last night that we saw between the Dolphins and the Bills. So I'm excited for week 3 and excited to see you guys next week.
No doubt. Looking forward to it. For Philip Nelson, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been your NFL Week 3 edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Enjoy the games and good luck, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.